And now continuing with our look then at part two of the study guide, the Medieval Europe Study Guide. The objective is we're going to review the key concepts for the unit. We have our final exam coming up in the next few days. So we're finishing up the study guide. Don't forget then you're also going to write in the notes on your study guide that you see here. And so we're gonna start today with the fifth topic of Spain. We will get back to Spain when we talk about the rise of Islam in the next unit and the important work that was done in Spain during the stay of the Muslims in Spain. And so after the fall of Rome, we have mentioned previously, the Germanic tribes took over. It was not just in Rome, okay, but it also took over a lot of the other parts of the Roman Empire, including the areas of France and Germany and Spain. Then that was, of course, 476, but then by 711, okay, the Muslims came in and invaded Spain, and they decided to stay there. So they got into Spain. They were like, "Oh man, this looks nice in here. We're staying." And so they stayed in Spain. Again, we'll talk more about their work in Spain during the time of the Middle Ages. Spanish Christians between 1200 and 1400 then tried to reconquer Spain, called La Reconquista. Let's take a look really quickly at the map right here. So if you take a look at this map, you will see it says Caliphate of Cordoba. Okay? Caliphate of Cordoba. Caliphate meaning it is run by the caliph, which is a Muslim title. Okay, and so on this map as well, you can see that some of the cities here are actually named in Arabic, and so a lot of the Spanish cities are actually Arabic words. So Cordoba in Arabic became Cordoba in Spanish. Saracusta up here in the north became Saragossa. Okay, and you have here Musia, which is kind of the same name, just a different spelling. Okay, and you have Tulaituya, which became Holy Toledo. Okay, and by the way, the Arabic name for Spain was Al Andalus. Okay, Al Andalus was the Arabic name for Spain. But again, we will get back to that when we talk about the Muslims in Spain. By 1492, all of Spain was reconquered by Christians, called a Reconquista. And by the way, that should be familiar to you as well. 1492, the year that Columbus sailed for Spain to the New World. And but not you know what? But not only Muslims were kicked out of Spain in 1492, but also Jews as well. And the Inquisition fought heresy within the Catholic Church. Okay, and so they would question Inquisition, meaning they would question you to make sure that you were a good Christian or not just hiding, that you were not Jewish or Muslim, just pretending to be a Christian. Okay. All right. So the next topic we'll talk about is feudalism, and feudalism developed because there was no central authority in Europe. And it really came to pass, especially after the death of Charlemagne in 814. It really developed because his large empire was divided into small kingdoms. I mean, there were kingdoms, and because his sons that came after were kind of weak, so they were weak sauce. So that's what developed. The really feudalism really, really, truly developed after Charlemagne. You had, as we have mentioned previously, there was a strict hierarchy of kings, nobles, knights, peasants, and serfs, just like we saw the power pyramid on a couple of the warm ups. Peasants and serfs lived in poor conditions. We mentioned that previously, often with rushes for floors. So instead of having, like a rug, for example, they would have rushes, and rushes are terrible because they collected waste and germs, increasing the spread of diseases. It was actually a great place for germs to hide. Okay, and you can imagine how many times the rushes were cleaned. Not really. Okay, and so Feudalism developed because there was no central authority. So now we're going to take a look at this video. In feudalism, weak kings and strong nobles. And then we'll get back with the rest of today's information in a few moments. Okay, now back from the video. Okay, so we'll get to the Crusades. Now, this section is a small section because, again, just like Spain, we're going to get back to the Crusades when we talk about the rise of Islam in the next section. But just overall, the Crusades began due to the Muslim conquest of the Holy Land, which is the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a holy city for the three major religions in the area. You have Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And Jerusalem is a very important city to all those religions. And it's no accident that even in modern times, there are problems with the three religions there in the area of Jerusalem. The Crusades was a series of wars between 1095 and 1220. And Europeans were not successful at taking back Jerusalem. We have mentioned previously that the First Crusade went well for the Europeans, but then after that, it was not very successful. They pretty much lost all their holdings that they were able to gain for the First Crusade, and the Muslims never left really until about 1923. So that's like, what, 700, 800, 900 years? In control of Jerusalem. But again, we'll get back to the Crusades in the next unit. And now the unit we just covered here on the bubonic plague. And again, remember, you're going to write the notes, okay, that you see on the lines on your study guide. We have mentioned the plague killed nearly half of the European population. And the disease spread because of close contact between people. Now, you didn't have to have really physical contact. We have mentioned, the fleas of the rats could jump, from people to people. Okay, could just jump and start biting others that are diseased. But you also had other strains of the plague, just sneezing or coughing. All those bacteria are up in the air. Somebody breathes it in, boom, they get a different version of the plague. Okay, so the disease spread without physical contact. Okay, but because people were in close proximity, people lived together. They lived with their animals, and of course, if the animals are, heavy with fur, then they would have fleas. And like I said, we have mentioned previously too that the plague spread to animals, to other mammals as well, not just to humans. So it was quite a bad time between 1347 and 1353. And now we mentioned that people did survive the plague, no? Survivors then were in high demand. And they could say, hey, pay me more. Do you see anybody else that survived? It's me. You pay me more. Okay, so they had increased the wages and there was increased cost for the nobles because the nobles weren't about to do physical labor. Are you kidding? We're nobles. Okay? And so if they wanted their land, tended to, somebody got to make the bread, somebody got to do the mill, right? Then they had to pay the increased wages and the increased cost. Okay? And that, of course, led to a decrease in their power. So now the nobles lost a lot of their power because they were subject. Now they were subject to the survivors of the plague, peasants and serfs that were there. And so the effect then was the plague was a breakdown of feudalism as the workers now had more power. And so now as the king gains more power, which happened because now we don't need nobles for servants, for serfs and peasants. We don't need nobles to get the army together. So now the king gets more power. And so now what we see towards the end of feudalism, with the end of feudalism toward the end of the Middle Ages, we see the rise of nations that we have mentioned previously. As a matter of fact, speaking of the rise of nations, let's take a look then at this video. The later Middle Ages, monarchies and nation states, and then we will get back with the rest of today's information in a few moments.